Let's just dive right into this, all right? Did you know that El Paso, Texas is actually closer to San Diego, California than it is to Houston? I mean, that is just wild to think about. Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide today as we explore a massive and remarkably diverse piece of geography. We're going to be looking at the whole shebang, everything from the vegetation growing on top of the soil right down to the geology buried beneath it. All of this comes together to build the unique, well, let's call it the Texasosity of the Lone Star State. We're going to see firsthand exactly how the physical environment acts as this giant canvas that Texas history is painted on. So here's our roadmap for today. 1. The themes of geography. 2. Exploring Texas landforms. 3. A climate of extremes. 4. Naming the Texas landscape. 5. Rural to urban shifts. And finally, 6. The potential of Texas. Starting off with Section 1, the themes of geography, foundations of study. Before we can even begin to understand a massive, diverse place like Texas, we really have to ask how historians and geographers actually start studying it. Geography, at its core, is the study of places and the relationship between people and their environment. Now, you might be wondering, why does this actually matter to us? Well, because history doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It happens on a stage, and geography literally builds that stage. Historians use it to figure out exactly why civilizations developed exactly where they did and how the land, water, and weather actively drove history forward. Think about how we describe where things are. You have absolute location. This is the exact mathematical coordinates on the globe, like 31 degrees north and 100 degrees west. It's the precise spot you'd punch into a GPS. But then you have relative location. This describes the state by its borders and surroundings, kind of like how you describe your neighborhood to a friend. Relatively speaking, Texas is bordered by Mexico to the south and west, plus New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and the Gulf of Mexico. Both methods tell us where Texas is for sure, but relative location really starts giving us clues about its culture, its trade, and its weather. And that brings us to the core framework we'll be using today, the 5 themes of geography. We've got location, place, human-environment interaction, movement, and region. I want you to really keep human-environment interaction in mind as we go, because Texans don't just passively exist on the land. They actively wrestle with it, they adapt to it, and they completely transform their environment. Moving right along to Section 2, exploring Texas landforms, physical features. So what is a landform? It's exactly what it sounds like, a natural physical feature of the Earth's surface. We're talking about massive, towering mountains, endless flat plains, blistering deserts, plateaus, deep basins, you name it. Geographers use these physical characteristics to divide up the Earth's surface, and because Texas is just impossibly large, it has an incredible variety of them. In fact, geographers divide Texas into 4 major physical regions, and the contrast is just mind-boggling. Seriously, imagine taking a road trip. You could start in the thick, wet pine forests and sprawling marshes of the coastal plains in the east. Drive inland to the north-central plains, and suddenly you're in gently rolling, hilly forested land with oaks and hickories. Keep going west, and the Great Plains open up into these flat expanses with thin, rocky soil and the jaw-dropping Palo Duro Canyon. Finally, way out west, the Mountains and Basins region contains the unforgiving Chihuahuan Desert and the state's highest point, Guadalupe Peak. It is literally 4 completely different worlds packed inside one single state. Which brings us to Section 3, a climate of extremes, weather patterns. The physical land we just talked about directly shapes the weather. Let's define climate real quick. Climate is the average weather conditions of a place over an extended period of time. We're talking hundreds or thousands of years to change, totally different from the daily weather you see on the local news. Texas is so huge that it acts as a literal battleground where 10 different climatic regions collide. You've got warm, moist air barreling in from the Gulf of Mexico, mixing violently with cold, dry air sweeping down from the Rocky Mountains. To put that into perspective, let's look at the number 54. Down by Orange and Beaumont in the eastern coastal plains, they get roughly 54 inches, and in some East Texas counties, even up to 60 inches of annual precipitation. This area is a wet, subtropical, humid zone that feels a lot like Louisiana. Think about that for a second. 60 inches is 5 feet of water dumping from the sky every single year. Now, compare that 5 feet of water to just 14 inches. Way out in El Paso in the west, surrounded by the Great Chihuahuan Desert, the annual precipitation plummets to under 14 inches. Actually, scratch that. In some years, it's closer to 9 inches. Within one single state, you have this massive variation in water, heat, and vegetation, and that dictates exactly how people can survive there. Section 4. Naming the Texas Landscape, Human Geography. When you look at a map of Texas, the place names themselves tell this fascinating story. They reveal literal layers of previous inhabitants. A lot of places still retain their original American Indian names, while others showcase the heavy influence of Spanish, French, German, Czech, or Anglo colonizers and settlers. People name these towns and rivers based on prominent physical features of the land, or they name them after heroes, founders, or even homelands they desperately missed. The language left on the map is a direct, visible footprint of the human-environment interaction from the past. Section 5. Rural to Urban Shifts. Demographics. So I want you to ask yourself a question. Why do more people live in Houston than in Lubbock? It's not a random accident, I promise you. It's a fantastic question that forces us to connect climate, landforms, and human settlement. Just think back to what we just learned about the rainfall and soil in the east versus the west. Houston, sitting pretty in the coastal plains, boasts a population of over 2.3 million people. Austin, right on the edge of the plains, is nearing 1 million. Meanwhile, El Paso and Lubbock have significantly smaller populations. The rich soil, abundant water, and access to the Gulf Coast in the east act as these giant magnets. They pull in massive economic activities, from shipping to manufacturing. And this environment doesn't just sustain a larger population, it creates a highly dynamic age distribution as young professionals constantly migrate in for jobs. That completely supercharges the region's overall growth rate compared to the drier, more agriculturally constrained Great Plains. This perfectly highlights the shift between rural and urban societies. Historically, the image of Texas was highly rural. We all know the stereotype, right? The lone cowboy on the vast agricultural countryside, totally defined by open farming and ranching. But over the last century, Texas experienced a massive demographic shift toward a highly industrial, urban society. That cowboy has largely been replaced by towering skyscrapers and massive highway traffic, with populations heavily concentrated in booming city centers. And a key geographic reason for this shift is the 98th meridian. As you travel west across Texas, right near the city of Abilene, you hit this invisible wall, a line of semi-aridity. It literally starts green and ends brown. The rainfall just drops off drastically west of this line. This creates an absolute agricultural limitation that dictates economic activities. It's exactly why there's less broad cropland in the west and why we see such massive urbanization and population concentration in the wetter eastern half of the state. Geography is quite literally drawing the map of human settlement. And our final section, Section 6, the potential of Texas, looking forward. To manage a state this amazingly complex, pretty much every governmental entity, from education boards setting history standards to environmental protection agencies, has to carefully track these massive shifts. They measure historical eras and demographic patterns, tracking the causes and effects of migration, the shift from agriculture to industrialism, and the management of all those natural resources. These entities provide the structure we need to understand how a pluralistic society navigates such a wildly diverse geographical space. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. Texas has completely transitioned from scattered world settlements into an industrial, urban powerhouse, and it was entirely driven by its geography. So the big question is, how will Texas continue to adapt its unique physical environment to manage its booming future population and its absolutely boundless potential? How is the geography of tomorrow going to look different than the geography of today? Thank you so much for joining me as we explored the incredible Texasosity of this great state. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.